Sammy Guevara is one of AEW's brightest prospects and fastest rising stars, and he has wowed AEW audiences with his entertaining character, impressive athleticism, and willingness to take matches to the next level. Sammy Guevara has come a long way from when he first appeared in AEW, as the smug, tongue-wagging guy who wore a panda head to the ring. Everybody's first reaction to Sammy Guevara was this.
Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that? No damn well who I am. Who the fuck is that?
But now he has proved exactly who he is, and he has grown into a superstar. Sammy Guevara has always been a fan of wrestling since he was a young child, and when Sammy Guevara was an adult, his love for wrestling caused him to train to become a wrestler at Booker T's wrestling school. Sammy cultivated his high-flying style of wrestling on the independent circuits, and was even on Impact at some point. But he finally got his big break in wrestling in 2019, when at AEW's Double or Nothing ticket rally, the braggadocious, cocky Sammy Guevara announced that he had signed with AEW. At this point, Sammy Guevara was a heel, so he was up to a lot of heel antics, and he self-proclaimed himself as the best ever. At this moment in time, he seriously had a punchable face. From here, Sammy Guevara was involved in the first ever singles match in AEW history with Kip Sabian. Sammy had the honor of being the very first impression that many people have of the singles action in AEW, and so there was a lot of pressure on him and Kip Sabian in this match. They wrestled a pretty solid match, but unfortunately, Sammy Guevara took the loss in this match. Sammy Guevara once again had the honor of being in the first ever televised match with Cody Rhodes on the first ever AEW Dynamite on TNT. Sammy and Cody wrestled an excellent match, with Cody Rhodes picking up the win. More with Cody Rhodes down the line. The fact that Sammy was chosen to be in two very significant matches in AEW history was proof that AEW management saw him in high regard and trusted him a lot. This trust was further evident later in the night when Sammy Guevara was revealed as a member of wrestling legend Chris Jericho's new faction, the Inner Circle, in a post-match beatdown of the Elite. Sammy Guevara closed out that episode of Dynamite with his new band of brothers, and between Sammy being in the first ever match on AEW Dynamite to him joining the hottest and newest faction, the Inner Circle, in the same night, his stock exponentially grew. This was shown with the increase in viewers and subscribers for his YouTube vlog show, which has now grown to insane levels today. At the time of this recording, his YouTube channel stands at 200,000 subscribers. Shout out to the vlog crew. After Sammy Guevara was revealed as a member of the Inner Circle, Chris Jericho jokingly said that Sammy Guevara looks like a Spanish god, and from here, Sammy Guevara ditched the best ever moniker and chose to go by the Spanish god. Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara's on-screen chemistry was off the charts too, as they wrestled a bunch of tag team matches together in the early episodes of AEW Dynamite on TNT. Their tag team went under the name Le Sex Gods, and they even challenged for the AEW World Tag Team Championships, but unfortunately lost. Le Sex Gods were involved in some of the most entertaining stuff on the show every week. There was a lot of spotlight showcased on Sammy Guevara, as he was on TV almost every week, and he started doing his picture-in-picture cue cards where he would say funny things and he would ask celebrities to hit him up, and this showed how creative he was, and some of the stuff that he showed was incredibly funny. Sammy Guevara and the rest of the Inner Circle then backed up Chris Jericho in his feuds with the Elite, Cody Rhodes and Jon Moxley, and Sammy Guevara developed a tendency to get absolutely murdered on national TV. Sammy was always on the receiving end of the most gnarly bumps, like when Dustin Rhodes gave him a Canadian destroyer on the apron.
Always trying to find the enemies, and the enemy is
fatality.
Or that time the Young Bucks super kicked him into oblivion.
super kick.
It was at this moment he knew he fucked up.
Welcome to the party.
Or that time Jon Moxley gave him a sickening paradigm shift.
And the paradigm shift.
Sammy Guevara's insane selling ability really amplified the sickening bumps that he was taking, and every single time he got murdered on national TV, he was the talk of the internet. Sammy Guevara then got involved in a feud with Darby Allin, and he rammed Darby Allin's throat into his skateboard, which caused Darby Allin to go missing from Dynamite for a few weeks from a kayfabe throat injury. But when Darby returned, he challenged Sammy to a match at AEW's Revolution 2020, and this was a really good but short match. In this match, Sammy Guevara did a 630 senton from the top turnbuckle to Darby, who was laid out on a table outside of the ring, and this was absolutely insane to watch and was probably the most dangerous spot on the pay-per-view. Sammy Guevara unfortunately took the loss in this match, but even though Sammy lost, it wasn't all that bad because he was still getting himself over and he had momentum going for him. Sammy Guevara was then scheduled to be in the first ever Blood and Guts match, which is a wargame style match in a double-sided cage, but unfortunately the pandemic happened and all the plans for this were scrapped. At this moment in time, AEW Dynamite was in a pretty bad state because wrestling without crowds was a pretty hard thing to get accustomed to for fans. Sammy Guevara even wrestled Kenny Omega for the AAA Mega Championship, and he unfortunately lost, but this match would have been praised more if it had been in front of a full crowd. In response to the hard times that AEW was facing at that moment, they announced a tournament to crown the inaugural TNT champion, and Sammy Guevara was a participant in this tournament. Unfortunately, Sammy Guevara lost in the first round to Darby Allin for the second time. Sammy Guevara in the Inner Circle then went on to continue to feud with the Elite, and in a Falls Count Anywhere match with him and Chris Jericho versus Matt Hardy and Kenny Omega, Sammy Guevara continued his trend of getting murdered on national TV.
Sammy's running like a scalded dog.
Mono got put in a pack. He's dead. Ghost got put in a pack. He's dead. Thumps got put in a pack. He's dead.
Sammy Guevara getting chased and hit by a golf cart went viral, and Sammy became a meme, and these memes were absolutely hilarious. The Inner Circle and the Elite's feud then culminated in a stadium stampede match, which was a cinematic match that took place in the TIAA Bank Stadium. In this match, Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy tried to murder Sammy Guevara again with a golf cart, but Sammy just managed to escape. But sure enough, Sammy Guevara was murdered at the end of this match when Kenny Omega gave him a one-winged angel off a ledge and onto a crash pad for the 1-2-3. After this match, Sammy Guevara entered into the worst period of his career. Trigger warning for sensitive viewers. An old clip resurfaced from a podcast that Sammy Guevara did in 2016 of him making a distasteful joke about sexually assaulting WWE wrestler Sasha Banks. And this led to the internet temporarily cancelling Sammy Guevara, which led to AEW suspending Sammy and ordering him to go to sensitivity training. And his weekly pay was donated to the Jacksonville Women's Center. Sammy Guevara sent out a tweet and released a YouTube video apologizing for the comments that he had made, and he took accountability for the words that he had said. Sasha Banks also said that she had been in contact with Sammy, and she expressed that Sammy had personally apologized to her. Quite honestly, this whole situation was a mess and could have destroyed Sammy Guevara's whole career. But because Sammy seemed very genuine in his apology and patched things up with Sasha Banks, most people seemed to have forgiven Sammy for what he said. So a month later, when he returned to AEW under a Serpentico mask, the general reception from the fans was that they were happy to see him back. But nonetheless, he now had a whole lot more to prove to people because of what happened. Immediately when he returned, he continued his feud with Matt Hardy, and Sammy Guevara's and Matt Hardy's feud is the most cursed feud in the history of AEW. Sammy and Matt's feud started before AEW Double or Nothing, and they had one match together in which Matt Hardy took the win. When Sammy Guevara returned from his suspension, him and Matt Hardy would get into a brawl, and this would result in Sammy Guevara throwing a legitimate steel chair into Hardy's face, which busted open Hardy pretty badly. This spot was planned, but when Sammy Guevara couldn't find the gimmick chair that he was supposed to use, he panicked and picked up a legitimate steel chair and hurled it at Matt Hardy's face. Sammy Guevara reportedly caught a lot of backstage heat for this, and Matt Hardy was reportedly furious at Sammy and he promised a receipt. Matt Hardy eventually did get his receipt versus Sammy Guevara in a tables match, as Matt Hardy busted Sammy Guevara open on the side of his head. This table match was pretty good and Sammy Guevara picked up the win, but because they both had a win over each other and they both busted open each other once, they had to settle this feud once and for all. So a broken rules match was set for AEW's All Out 2020, which basically was a last man standing match, and the stipulation going into this match was that if Matt Hardy lost, then he would retire. Going into this match, everybody was excited to see what was going to happen, but instead their feud just got more cursed. Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy got onto a scissor lift, and Sammy speared Matt Hardy off of this. There were two tables set up to cushion the fall for Matt Hardy, but the two tables were set up too close to the scissor lift, so they both completely missed one table, causing the back of Matt Hardy's head to hit the concrete. It's important to note that this was not Sammy Guevara's fault, as he was as soft as possible with his spear. As a viewer watching this, when Matt Hardy hit the concrete, you immediately knew something was wrong. And what preceded off this was the most nail-biting and agonizing few minutes in AEW history. After Matt Hardy's head hit the concrete, he was out cold and could barely stand, but he tried to continue with the match despite being extremely dazed and stumbling all over the place. This led to the referee stopping the match, but somehow, someway, the match was restarted, which legitimately concerned everybody watching. What made this even more unbearable and uncomfortable to watch was that Matt Hardy and Sammy Guevara decided to do the finish of this match, and they started to climb the high stage set, which was probably not the best decision for a man who couldn't even stand a few minutes ago and was probably very concussed. As they were climbing the stage set, the very real fear creeped into everybody's mind that Matt Hardy could fall and potentially injure himself really bad. Luckily, they didn't get up too high, and Sammy was thrown off the stage set and lost the match. This match was early on in the pay-per-view, and watching this really left gravel in your guts for the rest of the night, as it was hard to enjoy the rest of the pay-per-view. And that's why AEW's All Out is one of AEW's worst rated pay-per-views of all time. Luckily, Matt Hardy came out of this okay and took some time off, but everybody was just glad that this cursed feud was finally over. But it didn't stop. Matt Hardy was attacked by a mysterious assailant, but it was later revealed to be Sammy Guevara, and Sammy said that he would not leave Matt alone until he left him on the shelf indefinitely. So this set up their fourth match together, which was an elite deletion match on the Hardy compound at AEW Full Gear 2020. Fans weren't too keen on seeing Matt and Sammy work together again, but the fact that this match was scheduled to be cinematic made people give it a chance, and this cinematic match was quite honestly awesome, as Matt Hardy even tried to murder Sammy Guevara again with fireworks.
Run.
Matt Hardy won this match though, and finally the feud between the two was over. At Full Gear 2020 as well, MJF defeated Chris Jericho, which meant that MJF and his right-hand man, Wardlow, would join the Inner Circle. Sammy Guevara was not a fan of this decision. This was evident on the Inner Circle's Las Vegas trip, when Sammy Guevara had some hostility towards MJF and even drew all over MJF's face. Tensions continued to rise with Sammy and MJF as time went on, and the other members also grew frustrated with MJF. Sammy Guevara then told Chris Jericho that if one more incident with MJF happened, he would leave the Inner Circle. MJF constantly made backhanded comments and snide remarks to Sammy Guevara, constantly calling him little guy, even though MJF is younger than Sammy, and this pissed Sammy Guevara off a lot. Sammy then attacked MJF after a backstage spat, which supposedly left MJF with a rib injury, and MJF milked this injury to Chris Jericho like $1 million. At this point, Sammy Guevara had had enough of MJF's crap, and he told Chris Jericho that he was leaving the Inner Circle, much to Chris Jericho's dismay. This was supposed to see Sammy Guevara land up in Impact Wrestling for a while, but both parties could not come to an agreement about storylines. But anyway, the Inner Circle without Sammy Guevara quite honestly did not feel the same, and it felt very weird seeing the Inner Circle without him. Fortunately though, about a month later, Sammy Guevara returned and he revealed that he set up a camera in the Inner Circle's locker room, and he had caught MJF trying to persuade the Inner Circle to turn on Chris Jericho. He showed Chris Jericho this, and the Inner Circle turned on MJF, but just as the Inner Circle were about to attack MJF, the lights went out, and MJF's new faction, the Pinnacle, with FTR, Wardlow, and Shawn Spears, was revealed, and they proceeded to massacre the Inner Circle. All of this intense beef culminated in a blood and guts match between the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle. This match was every bit as bloody and barbaric as everybody expected, and Sammy Guevara even got busted open in this match as well. Sammy Guevara stole the show, however, as he was arguably the most athletic guy in that match, and he did a Spanish fly to Shawn Spears and a coast to coast, and this was freaking awesome to watch. The Inner Circle unfortunately took the loss in this match, but this feud then continued in a Stadium Stampede match at AEW's Double or Nothing 2021, and the stipulation going into this match was that if the Inner Circle lose, then they would have to disband. This match was filled with many memorable moments and was a sort of half cinematic, half real wrestling match, which resembled the transition from pandemic wrestling to post-pandemic wrestling. Sammy Guevara shined in the second part of this match as he got the win for the Inner Circle when he gave Shawn Spears a 630 senton for the 1-2-3. This was very significant because the fact that Sammy got the win for the Inner Circle in the main event of one of AEW's biggest pay-per-views showed how much management trusted him and how much he had redeemed himself. The Inner Circle then closed that pay-per-view in a blaze of glory. After this match, MJF and Sammy Guevara's personal beef culminated in a match that had been brewing ever since MJF and Sammy met. These two men genuinely didn't like each other, as Sammy Guevara expressed that MJF was given everything on a silver platter while he had to earn everything that was ever given to him. The match between MJF and Sammy Guevara was really good, but unfortunately Sammy Guevara took the loss in this match. On Sammy's vlog, a friendship started to bloom with one of AEW's enhancement talents, Fuego del Sol. Fuego del Sol plays the sympathetic underdog very well, and him and Sammy's friendship grew stronger as time went on. People were genuinely starting to root for Fuego del Sol after a string of many losses. This caused him to get a title match for the TNT Championship against the Redeemer, Miro, who was on a rampant run with the TNT Championship. And the stipulation in this match was that if Fuego won, he'd win an AEW contract. Miro picked up the win in a dominant fashion, but after this match, Sammy Guevara walked down to the ring with a contract from Tony Khan in hand and gave it to Fuego. This was such a wholesome moment because you could tell that Sammy was genuinely happy for Fuego. Fuego couldn't conquer the unbeatable and dominant Miro, but Sammy Guevara was the next challenger for the TNT title. And much to everybody's shock, Sammy Guevara defeated Miro after giving him a 630 senton and was the new TNT champion. Confetti fell down down to the ring as Sammy was hoisted up by his comrades, and this was such a great moment because Sammy had always been an underdog in AEW, but now he was finally getting his due. Just before Sammy Guevara won the TNT title though, he asked his girlfriend of 8 years, Pam Nizio, to marry him on national TV. But after about 3 months, Sammy Guevara announced that his engagement was called off. And almost immediately after this announcement, it was revealed that he was dating Conti. And all the Conti simps were in the mud because of this. Title run was really good as he defended the title in excellent matches against the likes of Bobby Fish, Ethan Page, Jay Lethal, and Tony Nese. Cody Rhodes was then next in line to challenge for the TNT Championship. But unfortunately, Sammy Guevara took the loss in this match, and he lost the TNT Championship and looked very distraught. A rematch was scheduled between the two, but Cody Rhodes was unable to defend the TNT Championship on the special TV episode of AEW Battle of the Belts. So a match to decide the interim TNT champion was announced between Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes. Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes wrestled an excellent match, with Sammy Guevara picking up the win and becoming the new interim TNT champion. Because Sammy was the TNT champion and Cody never relinquished the TNT championship, a unification ladder match was announced between Sammy Guevara and Cody. This was one of the greatest singles ladder matches in recent memory, and Sammy Guevara executed one of the greatest and smoothest high-risk cutters that we've ever seen in wrestling. This spot just showcased how talented Sammy Guevara was, and you know you must be doing something right when you've got the fans on their feet jumping up and down. Sammy Guevara then knocked Cody Rhodes off of the ladder and grabbed both TNT championships, becoming the undisputed TNT champion in the process. Watching the crowd erupt at Sammy Guevara grabbing the championships was very satisfying, and it really felt that Sammy Guevara had arrived. Quite honestly, he deserved it. And that's where we are in the story so far of Sammy Guevara. Sammy Guevara has come a long way in AEW, and it's wonderful to see how much he's grown. Sure, Sammy Guevara has made a lot of mistakes in the past, but it's not hard to tell that under it all, he has a heart of gold and he's just a kid chasing his dream. Sammy Guevara has shown time and time again that he is willing to put his body on the line for the entertainment of wrestling fans. And this sort of thinking has brought Sammy close to the top of AEW. And one day, he's most certainly going to win the AEW World Championship. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and follow me on my socials. But anyway, goodbye, you jobbers.